This week, it's a special edition of Hack Naked News. We've got a guest co-host from Cybereason, Israel Barak, that will be joining us to talk about some very specific news articles on the topics of ransomware, predictions for 2017, a hospital gets hacked, and the shadow brokers. All that and more on this edition of Hack Naked News. This is a Security Weekly production.
This episode of Hack Naked News is brought to you by IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. Access over 2,000 hours of up-to-date, high-quality video content live and on demand via Chromecast, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, PC, or your mobile device. IT Pro TV's premium membership grants access to all courses, transcripts, virtual machine labs, and transcender practice exams. Corporate and group pricing are available. For a free 7-day trial and 30% off the life of your account, visit itpro.tv/hacknaked and use the code HN30. Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending these assets? Have you penetration tested them? Start 2017 by taking a proactive approach to your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to see how they can help you sleep better at night. Tenable Network Security, creators of Nessus, the world's best vulnerability scanner. Jumpstart your security program today and evaluate Security Center CV, the continuous security monitoring solution. For more information, visit them on the web at tenable.com. Logarithm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all of observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logarithm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Has your network been breached? Cybereason can help you answer this question. Cybereason products hunt for threats within your network and eliminate them in real time. To Cybereason, real time means within seconds. Founded by former military hackers who don't play by the rules, they've built this experience into their platform. Harness ingenuity and imagination, not just code, to defeat hackers. Cybereason. Disrupt the adversary and let the hunt begin.
Welcome, everyone, to Hack Naked News. This is episode 107 for January 17th, 2017. I'm your host, Paul Asadarian, broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. On the lines via Skype from just north of us in Massachusetts, Mr. Israel Barak from Cybereason, the one and the only Israel Barak. How's it going?
Great to be on the show.
Yes, always nice to have you on our shows here at Security Weekly. Israel, you are infamous in Security Weekly history for gifting us the world's most gigantic cocktail shaker, which we use all the time, which is great.
Oh, thank you so much for mentioning it. You know, I've been trying to, beat myself on, on this aspect, trying to find bigger and bigger ones. Although I think the one that I got you guys is pretty much the biggest I could ever find.
Takes the cake. So we're going to talk about some very specific news articles this week, Israel, that really primarily relate back to endpoint security, malware, and ransomware, which you, in your role, what is exactly your role at Cybereason for our audience, first and foremost, before we dive into it?
I'm the Chief Information Security Officer.
Excellent. So it's really funny, actually, when I was researching some ransomware security news that was breaking recently, Cybereason was in the news. I'm like, imagine that. It came up like in my news feeds that Cybereason has released a free product, and I'm sure you're going to fill us in on all the details, but essentially it's a free product. You're going to describe it better than I can for detecting ransomware, both in a signature basis, but also as it evolves and looking for encrypted files, and then doing some other smart things in terms of a honeypot to put a container around ransomware. So I want you to first describe this product announcement and how it can help people with who may want to protect themselves from ransomware.
Well, Paul, Ransom Free is essentially a free product that's kind of derived in terms of its underlying technology from our behavioral detection and analysis capabilities. Essentially, once it's installed, it does three things. First, it can detect the ransomware malware that arrives on a computer if it has a signature it recognizes. But because of ransomware families rapidly evolve, it also watches the activity of the ransomware, looking for attempts essentially to encrypt files. Finally, it deceives the ransomware into thinking that it's working, when in reality, all it's doing is operating in a secure honeypot of a container. Essentially, once the encryption process starts, the idea is that Ransom Free immediately goes into action and terminating that process.
Israel, how are you protecting Ransom Free from the attackers in terms of them noticing that it's on the system and trying to work around it?
So that's an awesome question. And, one of the insights that we've been getting from, the massive amounts of deployments of Ransom Free is it's really interesting from a research perspective, how many ransomware operators are actually testing their new tools against Ransom Free. Now, the idea is that as opposed to traditional signature-based detection, which is obviously pretty easy to bypass, the Ransom Free looks for a behavioral indicator that it doesn't matter how you turn a ransomware or turn it around, it essentially has to encrypt files. And the idea is that once Ransom Free detects this type of behavioral indicator of file encryption, it latches on to that process and perform its additional analysis. So if you're looking to encrypt files, you're going to be caught by that behavioral indicator.
And it actually prevents it from further encrypting files? Is that how it operates?
Exactly. Once a suspicious process has been identified, it goes into this sort of honeypot environment. It makes it think like it's encrypting files, but it's essentially giving us more and more information about how it's working and how it's doing its job. But essentially, it's not inflicting any damage on the machine. Once the user confirms that this is indeed an unwanted process, Ransom Free goes ahead and terminates it.
I realize in this line of questioning that you're likely not going to want to reveal how an attacker could bypass Ransom Free as well, because that would be bad, right? So that's good, as probably some of the authors would listen to this interview if that were the case, right? So how do you differentiate between a user who wants to legitimately encrypt a file and ransomware encrypting files?
So basically two mechanisms, right? Mechanism number one, we identify certain tools that we know are legitimate encryptors, right? But on the other hand, even if we don't identify or positively identify the encrypting tool, we raise this as a question to the user. File encryption, especially in mass volumes, is not a typical operation. It happens, but it doesn't happen a lot. Mm-hmm. So even if we don't positively identify the encryptor program as a benevolent program, and we raise this to the user to decide, you typically see a very low level of noise coming from the tool in terms of user questioning.
So what's the feedback been like in the field? Have you spoken with customers? Obviously you have, but share your experiences in speaking with customers that have detected ransomware in their systems and Ransom Free has protected them.
Well, so far we've been getting great feedback. I mean, we've heard that it's proving itself in the field, blocking ransomware both in production environments, with for small businesses, for individuals that have reached out and thanked the team for the tool saving them on a number of occasions. And we're also seeing very good results in terms of lab testing. Obviously, a wide variety of experts in the community are stress testing the tool. Nice. And so we're seeing great results both from the field and from labs.
And that's excellent for individuals as well. They can just download and install it. Are there any limitations for enterprises that want to take this and deploy it? And what are the limitations in that?
So first and foremost, it is, it's currently released for Windows operating systems only. So that's kind of the first thing you want to do. You want to take note of. The second thing is that it's built as a standalone tool, right, as opposed to a typical enterprise tool, right? It's first and foremost intended for kind of the SMB and consumer markets, even though we're seeing quite a lot of our, enterprise customers and prospects leveraging the tool as well.
Well, that's excellent. And then I'm assuming that if you like this product as an enterprise, then you can go, is this functionality included in the enterprise products geared at enterprises?
Yes, it's, once we released it as a free tool and first and foremost offered it to SMBs and consumers, we went ahead and integrated it into our enterprise product, and it is now available for early adopters of our newest release.
That's fantastic, especially as ransomware is one of the topics that both Cybereason and many experts predict will be a continuing trend in 2017 and likely beyond. I'm seeing ransomware not only more prevalent on some of the Windows systems that you're talking about, but also in your other prediction from the Cybereason blog, IoT security, which is also, I agree, a trend that we're going to see this year and continuing. And I think that products like Ransom Free are great for Windows platforms. I truly believe that we're going to make, and I'm sure you agree because you're in the endpoint security market, that we're making great strides in protecting especially Windows systems from this type of attack. But as ransomware increases, I'm seeing it trickle into more embedded IoT devices, Linux systems, databases, and all of these different technologies. And that's where my concern is. Do you agree? And what can we do to combat the kind of spread into other areas of ransomware?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Cybereason platform, currently supports a wide variety of operating systems, including, Windows, various flavors of Linux, Mac OS. But definitely, when you look into the IoT space, the challenge is the lack of standardization. Right, you're seeing this both in consumer IoT and industrial IoT. A lot of vendors create their own OS flavors. Some are completely proprietary, and it's definitely a challenge to create a tool that would, cover, let's say, a critical mass of the IoT space. I think it's definitely one of the major challenges, and it's definitely one of the reasons, if not the first and foremost primary reason, why we're not seeing the security market or endpoint security market evolving faster in the IoT space.
Yeah, and even from Google, who's responsible for a large number of devices on the consumer side, everything from laptops to Android-based phones. Now, Android's kind of a different story in my opinion. I think the security model is severely flawed, and you're a losing battle on the mobile front. The Chromium OS or Chrome OS is Linux-based, so we could get some protections there, I think. Do you support the Chrome OS?
So we don't currently support it, but definitely the transition into mobile endpoints and mobile devices is something that we've been closely looking into for 2017. It's not currently scheduled, but it's something that we're closely monitoring.
Right. Yeah, and Android's a hot mess, dude. It's tough to apply security there. Everything I've reading, and a couple of the articles I've covered recently on the show are the Google TV, which I'm not sure. I'm guessing that runs Android. I'm not 100% sure. Although someone also said it was an LG TV and not necessarily a Google TV that was ransomware. And I'm not sure what the underlying OS is. Probably Android, as we've run some technical segments about putting malware on Android and how easy it is to bypass some of those antivirus software packages on Android, which is the reason why companies such as Cybereason exist, is a lot of those gaps in the market. Am I correct in stating that?
You're absolutely right. And, specifically for ransomware, I think one of the interesting aspects of the ransomware economics, which makes it really so appealing to both sophisticated and novice attackers, is the relative simplicity of building right? A good ransomware, right? Unlike a traditional malware that has to stay for a long time on a target machine, which means it has to be sophisticated to avoid endpoint protection solutions for a long time. Ransomware really only has to work for a short period of time to make its impact. Right, so it's essentially any average software developer can build a very good piece of, from a technical perspective, a very good piece of ransomware. And the high potential profit that's associated with it really makes it, really generates a shift in the economics here. And the attackers are really just trying to come up with innovative marketing approaches, right? How do they distribute them to places that can fetch more profit, right? So we saw the transition from, just consumer devices into commercial devices, right? We see differentiations between, different commercial ransomware campaigns, right? Certain attackers target small businesses, certain attackers target medium size, certain attackers target healthcare, other target small financials. And it's really interesting to start seeing that shift also, into IoT. It's, the operation is really only limited by, the creativity of the attackers, right?
Yeah.
It's a marketing campaign.
And they definitely have an advantage, especially when you look at a niche market like healthcare. While Cybereason and other vendors that make protection software, you have to make software that a wide variety of people can use. If you're launching a ransomware attack, you're like, hey, most hospitals or healthcare organizations run this particular type of software. If we target that particular type of software, we're good. And I wanted to talk about the healthcare and hospital industry specifically, being in endpoint protection. My fear with that market is, while it's very important for patient care, these systems run and don't get infected with ransomware. However, on the opposite side of the coin, I find them to be hesitant to put endpoint protection on those systems for the same reasons, as it could cause adverse effects. So how are you coaching the medical community to adopting endpoint protection software?
Well, I think the medical community and healthcare vertical, is obviously becoming more and more aware of these threats, right? And they've built processes to better adopt endpoint security products into high assurance environments, right? Like lab environments, testings, and et cetera, et cetera. And so they're now, even though it's somewhat of a process, I think they're much more aligned these days to adopt, innovative technologies that they were, say, 2 years ago.
So let's talk a little bit about the shadow brokers, as this hits your area of expertise in the industry, certainly that you're in. I'm sure, like most endpoint protection companies, you're following a lot of the malware trends that are out there. And one of the stories that broke was the shadow brokers have released the so-called NSA exploits. Now, I'm very skeptical and I like conspiracy theories just as much as the next person. But, this is a really big leak of exploits and associated vulnerabilities that the shadow brokers have made public, supposedly used by government agencies, specifically U.S. NSA, to attack other countries. And with this coming out on the market, I'm curious how it affects your research at Cybereason and some of your approaches and how you follow the story, and what your thoughts are about this whole thing, because it's kind of fun to speculate what really is going on.
So, obviously we took our peek into the tools that were released to kind of satisfy our professional curiosity, just like probably a lot of other folks have done. I think people are becoming more and more aware into the fact that cyber operations are not necessarily just pieces of malware. Right. They are, the emphasis is on operation. Right. There's a lot going on when you compromise a target or an object than just throwing a piece of malware at them. And, I think, the dump by shadow brokers, whoever this group may be, and the manuals that were, released, a few years ago by, by Mr. Snowden kind of give us a peek into and kind of give the broader audience a peek into what a cyber operation is, right? And the fact that malware can be part of it, but essentially there's a lot going on in terms of driving a cyber operation for the months and maybe more even years that a cyber operation can take. There's a lot behind the scene happening from an operational perspective, driven by the people that that are behind it, in terms of moving in networks, deploying various tools, leveraging various techniques, living off of tools that they find in the target network to avoid malware detection. So I think that's an interesting peek into a world that traditionally a lot of folks kind of perceived as, let's just throw a piece of malware at them.
And certainly, I just want to start with there. I think that's where antivirus companies have really, traditionally been viewed as focusing on, and largely have focused on, that popular malware that everyone's like, oh, I got, an alert on my desktop, or did I notice something wrong? Like, the fact that you noticed something means it was your average, everyday common malware. And I like your point, because it's like these types of leaks are a glimpse into what's happening at a nation state level, or some really sophisticated groups out there that aren't associated with a nation state, and that it's really hard to tell the difference between those two.
Yep, absolutely. I think still there's a certain misconception in the market that when you're looking for a good endpoint protection solution, you're essentially looking for a good malware protection solution. Obviously there are great solutions out there that would, aim at detecting malware and malware variants. But these cases really give us, as you mentioned, Paul, a glimpse into the fact that a cyber operation is it's driven by people. It's driven by people that leverage, a very large set of tools. Many of those tools aren't necessarily pieces of malware, and malware is just a very small piece of it. So when you're looking to, kind of boost your endpoint capability, security operations center capabilities, you want to look broader than, what are my malware detection capabilities? You need to look into what my cyber operation detection capabilities are.
And oftentimes that a large portion of the way attackers get in, and I think in a lot of these more sophisticated attacks, it remains the same, that phishing is the most tried and true method. And do your products, or like, how do you interact with that phishing process? Like, where in the process would something like Cybereason's endpoint protection like play into that process, and how do you look at phishing and integrate it into the protections?
So that's really part of what I love about Cybereason. The idea is that it first and foremost changes kind of the rules of this detection game, with that it's not solely focused on catching malware, but focused on detecting that cyber operation. The idea is that you want to analyze the different behaviors, the set of behaviors that are happening in your environment across all enterprise machines, right? And try to categorize them as, well, this may be a behavior that is indicative of penetration, like a phishing, say, right? Or malicious attachment to an email. Another activity may be more indicative to privilege escalation required as preparation to move in the network. A third behavior may be associated with lateral movement in the network. Right. And once you have all these pieces, you can, one, get better detection, because you're not solely focused on identifying, the transient moment in time, which is the penetration, but you have the ability to kind of look, on a broader perspective across the entire phases of the operation in the organizational network. But you're also able to tie together the entire attack story, right? Here's something that happened, and here's everything that led to it, and everything that spawned off of it, to kind of get a full understanding of the attacker's tools, techniques, and procedures, as opposed to just an individual piece of malware that may not give you the type of context that you're looking for.
Along those lines, Israel, there was an article in here from Network World that's analyzing the endpoint security market in 2017. And while this is maybe fodder for a different show here where we talk about more of the market segmentation, I want to point it out as people listen to this, for news, and this is articles that people are writing about. Network World authors say that they're tracking around 50 endpoint security vendors. What advice do you have for folks listening to this show that are evaluating endpoint security vendors, and how should they test, and how should they come up with evaluation criteria, and how do they weed through 50 vendors to find the right solution for them?
So I think that's it's an awesome question. I think the first question that that's typically raised is, especially when you're looking into advanced threat detection tools, is how can I create a situation that resembles an advanced threat in a lab environment? A lot of folks are downloading, malware samples off of VirusTotal or some other place. They're running them in the environment, and they're kind of checking which solution has the best detection rate. Well, while it's a reasonable test, it's just a very small piece of what a good, advanced threat detection and response tool would do. And I think my, first and foremost, my advice would be, try to model as much as possible an advanced threat situation in a lab, right? Try to break it down to stages, right? Red teaming is a good example, right? When you look at red team operation, it goes in stages, right? Think of the stages of a red team operation. Think of the penetration, right? The persistence, the lateral movement in your network, the establishment of a command and control channel, et cetera, et cetera. And make sure that as part of your evaluation criteria, you have elements that reflect those different stages of an operation and measure the success rate of the different tools that you're evaluating with detecting these type of threats.
That's great advice. Israel, any other announcements that you want to make our listeners aware of?
Well, I think we're going to have some very interesting announcements. I'm not going to reveal everything prior to the RSA, with some very interesting detections that we've made in the very recent past. But I'll keep those for RSA forums.
That's right. You're just going to have to visit the Cybereason booth at RSA. Great advice. Thanks so much, Israel. And thanks, everyone, for listening and watching to this edition of Hack Naked News.